and said there would be no crossings would be very smart if Mexico would stop the caravans long before they get to our southern border, or if originating countries would not let them form. It is a way they get certain people out of their country and dump in U.S. No longer. Dems created this problem. No crossings, he wrote.His tweet comes after Mexican officials said there was no agreement of any type between its government and the United States that will require asylum seekers to wait in the country while their claims move through U.S. courts. Olga Sanchez Cordero, the top domestic policy official for President-elect Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, who takes office on December 1st, ruled out that Mexico would be declared a safe third country for asylum claimants. This followed a Washington Post report of a deal with the Trump administration known as Remain in Mexico, which quoted her calling it a short-term solution. The plan, according to the newspaper, foresees migrants staying in Mexico while their asylum claims in the United States are being processed, potentially ending a system President Donald Trump decries as catch and release that has until now often allowed those seeking refuge to wait on safer U.S. soil. The latest developments came as the situation at the border continued to worsen, and many were trying to cross the border by any means necessary. This included the young migrant mother who was injured after trying to climb a part of the border fence with her two small children on Friday. Border Patrol agent Tekae Michael says the 26-year-old Guatemalan woman found near the San Ysidro port of entry Friday night and landed on pieces of rebar that pierced one side of her body. Paramedics took her to a hospital for treatment.The San Diego Union-Tribune reports the children, ages 3 and 5, were not hurt. The woman told agents she was not part of the migrant caravan that traveled from Central America to the Mexican border city of Tijuana. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said defiantly threatened to close the southern border again if it becomes necessary, and insisted migrants will only be allowed to enter if their asylum application is approved. He tweeted, "Migrants at the southern border will not be allowed into the United States until their claims are individually approved in court. We only will allow those who come into our country legally. Other than that, our very strong policy is catch and detain. No releasing into the U.S. All will stay in Mexico. If for any reason it becomes necessary, we will close our southern border." There is no way that the United States will, after decades of abuse, put up with this costly and dangerous situation anymore. The rebar is part of ongoing work to replace decades-old fencing. It's not related to the American military's recent mission to fortify the fence in response to the caravan. Her children were also evaluated at the hospital for potential fall trauma and, showing no injuries, were released back to Border Patrol custody. Entering our country illegally, particularly over our walls, is not only dangerous but also very foolish, San Diego's chief Border Patrol agent Rodney Scott told the San Diego Tribune. This woman placed her own life and her children's lives in peril. She could have easily died if not for the quick response by our agents and Dems. Share this article. Share authorities said the rebar was part of the ongoing border fence construction and not related to the military's recent mission to fortify the fence in response to the caravan. The military has primarily been stringing concertina wire across the top of the fence. It was unclear if there was concertina wire where the woman crossed. Thousands of migrants who have traveled thousands of miles to flee their countries in Central America have been staying at a makeshift shelter in which the municipal government opened last Wednesday. originally planned to hold 3,000 migrants. The latest arrivals have put the shelter over capacity. On Thursday, Tijuana's mayor Juan Manuel Gastelum declared an international humanitarian crisis over the arrival of more than 5,000 mostly Central American migrants traveling in a caravan. Gastelum asked international organizations like the United Nations to help the city deal with the influx of migrants amid a lagging response from the Mexican federal government. He accused the Mexican government of neglecting its responsibilities to deal with migrant and immigration issues. Gastelum vowed not to commit the city's public resources to dealing with this situation. On Thursday, his government issued a statement saying that it was requesting help from the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Meanwhile, an investigation by the Miami Herald revealed that the political violence in Honduras, which has contributed to an exodus of migrants, was sometimes carried out with U.S.-made weapons used by the government's paramilitary force. The Honduran military police should not possess U.S.-made rifles sold under private arms licensing agreements, according to the State Department. Alejandro Martinez, who is now part of the migrant caravan, was targeted by a gang in Honduras who opened fire on him and a group of his friends. "We know that the guns come from the United States," Martinez told the Miami Herald at the time of the bloodshed. "These guns have no business in Honduras. They should stay in the United States. They are sending them to Honduras to kill us." More than a dozen people were shot and killed by the military police in the post-election violence, including several children, according to United Nations investigators. More than 30 were wounded by the paramilitary unit, a repressive force that answers directly to the Honduran president. The migrant caravan that left Honduras in mid-October was mostly well received by the towns it passed through along the way to the border. Even cities with few resources made sure the migrants had food and a place to rest. But in those places, the caravan stayed at most 2 nights with the exception of Mexico City. In Tijuana, many of the migrants who are fleeing violence and poverty are seeking asylum in the United States and face the prospect of spending months in the border city before they have the opportunity to speak with a U.S. official. Gastelum said Friday that the Mexican government has talked about sending 20 tons of resources to Tijuana to help, but that 3/4 consisted of materials to reinforce the border and only 5 tons were for the migrants. The mayor also criticized the federal government for not taking more seriously President Donald Trump's threat Thursday to shut down the border if his administration determined Mexico had lost control of the situation in Tijuana. "That's serious," he said. Donald Trump said the U.S. shut down its border with Mexico because it's out of control, but he didn't elaborate on the details in his comments on Thursday. Asked in detail what he meant by closing the U.S. southern border, Trump responded, "I have already shut it down. I already shut it down for short periods. I shut down parts of the border because it was out of control. With the rioting on the other side in Mexico. And I just said, shut it down." Meanwhile, Mexico's incoming government denied a report Saturday that it plans to allow asylum seekers to wait in the country while their claims move through U.S. immigration courts. This is one of several options the Trump administration has been pursuing in negotiations for months. There is no agreement of any sort between the incoming Mexican government and the U.S. government, future Interior Minister Olga Sanchez said in a statement. Hours earlier, the Washington Post quoted her as saying, that the incoming administration of Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador had agreed to allow migrants to stay in Mexico as a short-term solution while the U.S. considered their applications for asylum. Lopez Obrador will take office on December 1. The Washington Post reported Saturday that the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump has won support from the Mexican president-elect's team for a plan dubbed Remain in Mexico. The newspaper also quoted Sanchez as saying, "For now, we have agreed to this policy of Remain in Mexico." The White House did not immediately respond to requests for comment. U.S. officials have said for months that they were working with Mexico to find solutions for what they have called a border crisis. Julieta Vences, a congresswoman with Lopez Obrador's Morena party who is also president of Mexico's Congressional Migrant Affairs Committee,